The declaration. When the message arrived. The broadcast came at dawn, and it came everywhere at once. Every screen on Earth, every radio frequency, every communication device suddenly carried the same message. Not a request. Not a negotiation. A declaration. Humans of Earth. I am War Commander Thane of the Krillian Armada. Your world has been selected for integration into the Krillian Empire. You have 48 hours to surrender your military forces and accept our governance. Resistance will be met with total annihilation. This is your only warning. The image showed a creature that looked like it had been designed to inspire fear. 8 feet tall, covered in crimson armor that seemed to be part of its own body, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like hot coals. Behind Thane, massive warships stretched into the darkness of space, hundreds of them, each one bristling with weapons that Earth's scientists couldn't even identify. In the Global Defense Coordination Center deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Commander Rachel Torres stood perfectly still, watching the broadcast replay for the 3rd time. Around her, officers from every nation scrambled to assess the threat, calculate response options, verify that this wasn't some elaborate hoax. How many ships? She asked quietly. Best estimate from orbital telescopes, replied Dr. Kim Sato, the facility's chief astrophysicist, 347 capital ships. Each one roughly the size of an aircraft carrier. Plus countless smaller craft we can't even count yet. And they just appeared? 12 minutes ago. No approach signature, no warning. They simply materialized at the edge of our solar system. Dr. Sato's hands trembled slightly as she pulled up the data. Commander, their technology is centuries beyond ours. Maybe millennia. If they attack. I know, Rachel said. Her voice stayed calm, but her mind was racing through scenarios, contingencies, options that all ended the same way. Earth had weapons, sure. Nuclear arsenals, orbital defense platforms, electromagnetic pulse systems. But against a fleet this size, with technology this advanced? It would be like throwing rocks at a hurricane. Secretary General Ahmad Hassan appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from the United Nations Emergency Chamber in New York. His face showed the strain of a man who'd just learned his entire species might have hours left to exist. Commander Torres, what are our options? Rachel looked at the fleet displayed on the holographic projection. Each ship was positioned with mathematical precision, forming a perfect sphere around Earth's solar system. A cage. A net. A threat that left no room for escape. Honestly, sir? We're outgunned, outmaneuvered, and out of time. She paused, then added more quietly, but we're not out of options. Hassan's eyebrows rose. Explain. The Krillians gave us 48 hours. That tells us something important. That they're being generous? No, sir. That they want something specific. If they just wanted us dead, they'd have fired already. They want our surrender. They want us intact. And that gives us leverage. Around the command center, officers looked up from their stations. A few started to understand where Rachel was going with this. You're suggesting we negotiate? Hassan asked. I'm suggesting we buy time, sir. Because there's something the Krillians don't know about us. Which is? Rachel's expression hardened. That we've been preparing for this exact scenario for 70 years. The secret humanity kept. In 1952, a radio astronomer named Dr. Eleanor Vance detected something that should have been impossible. A signal from deep space, clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, and clearly not friendly. The signal was encrypted, but when military cryptographers finally broke it, they found something terrifying: coordinates for Earth, marked as potential conquest target. The signal was never made public. Instead, a small group of scientists, military leaders, and politicians formed what they called the Sentinel Initiative. Their mission was simple but massive: prepare humanity for the day when we might not be alone, and when whoever found us might not come in peace. For 7 decades, the Sentinel Initiative worked in absolute secrecy. They recruited the brightest minds from every nation. They built weapons systems that officially didn't exist. They developed contingency plans for scenarios that most people thought belonged in science fiction movies. And most importantly, they learned to think like predators instead of prey. Now, 70 years later, Commander Rachel Torres stood in a facility that officially didn't exist, looking at weapons systems that officially weren't built, preparing to execute a plan that officially was never written. "Activate Sentinel Protocol," she said quietly. Every screen in the command center flickered once. Around the world, in hidden facilities that weren't on any map, systems that had been sleeping for decades suddenly woke up. Orbital platforms disguised as communications satellites rotated into firing position. Underground bases that people thought were abandoned research stations opened their hidden hangar doors. Submarine installations that were listed as decommissioned powered up their reactors. And everywhere, soldiers who'd trained their entire careers for a war no one believed would happen suddenly found themselves called to duty. Dr. Sato stared at the readouts appearing on her screen. "Commander, how is any of this possible?" "The resources alone. Every nation on Earth contributed," Rachel explained. "A fraction of each defense budget, redirected through classified channels. Officially listed as research and development, testing, maintenance of obsolete systems. Small enough that no one questioned it. Large enough that, over 70 years, it added up to something substantial." "How substantial?" Rachel pulled up a tactical display. Around Earth, tiny dots began appearing. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. "We have 217 orbital weapons platforms. 34 underground launch facilities. 17 deep space interceptor bases on the Moon and Mars. And a network of autonomous AI systems that have been watching, learning, and planning for 7 decades. One of the younger officers, Lieutenant Park, looked confused. "But Commander, even with all that, we're still outnumbered and outgunned." "You're thinking like prey, Lieutenant. The Krillians expect us to fight them head-on, to throw everything we have at their shields and armor until we're exhausted. That's not how we're going to win." "Then how?" Rachel's smile was cold. "We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to cheat." The response. 36 hours into the ultimatum, War Commander Thane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Dominance, studying the primitive planet below. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, utterly defenseless, completely at his mercy. His tactical officer, a younger Krillian named Vex, approached with visible confusion. "Commander, the humans have made no attempt to contact us. No surrender offer, no plea for mercy, no response at all." "Fear," Thane replied dismissively. "They're paralyzed by the reality of their situation." "Perhaps. But our scans show unusual activity across their planet. Power spikes in unexpected locations. Orbital adjustments of their primitive satellites." It could be nothing," Thane interrupted. "These creatures have barely left their own planet. Their weapons are chemical propulsion and crude nuclear devices. Even if they attempted resistance, it would be like insects attacking a mountain." Vex nodded, but his expression remained uncertain. The Krillian Empire had conquered 47 species across 12 star systems. Every species followed the same pattern: shock, denial, desperate resistance, inevitable surrender. The process was so predictable that Thane could set his chronometer by it. But something about this conquest felt different. The humans weren't following the pattern. With 12 hours remaining in the ultimatum, Earth finally sent a response. Not a surrender. Not a plea. Just 3 words, transmitted on every frequency the Krillians were monitoring. "We are ready." Thane stared at the message, then laughed. "Ready? Ready for what? Extinction?" He turned to his weapons master. "The moment the deadline expires, begin orbital bombardment of their major cities. We'll teach them what happens to species who..." Every alarm on the bridge erupted at once. "Contact!" Vex shouted. "Multiple contacts. Hundreds of them." On the tactical display, the space around Earth suddenly lit up with active weapons systems. Not the primitive satellites the Krillians had been tracking, but sophisticated platforms that had been hiding in plain sight, disguised as space debris, old satellites, even asteroids that turned out to be hollow and filled with weapons. Impossible, Thane breathed. Our scans showed no advanced technology. They shielded it somehow, Dex said, studying the readouts with growing alarm. Commander, these systems are more advanced than we estimated. Some of them are using principles we don't recognize. The first strike came without warning. A kinetic round, accelerated to near light speed, punched through the shields of a Krillian destroyer like they weren't even there. The ship split in half, its crew dead before they realized they were under attack. Then another strike. And another. Each one precise, calculated, targeting weak points in Krillian ship designs that the humans shouldn't have known about. Return fire. Thane roared. All ships, open fire. The Krillian fleet unleashed everything. Plasma cannons, particle beams, missile swarms that could level continents. The space between Earth and the invasion fleet became a storm of destruction. But the human platforms weren't where the Krillians were aiming. They'd already moved, repositioned, adjusted their tactics. The AI systems that had been watching and learning for 70 years had studied every alien transmission, analyzed every ship movement, predicted every possible Krillian strategy. And now they were fighting back with a precision that made Thane's blood run cold. A frigate exploded on his port side. A cruiser lost power on his starboard. 3 more destroyers took critical damage. In the span of 5 minutes, the Krillian armada lost more ships than they'd lost in their last 10 conquests combined. Commander. Dex's voice cracked with panic. We need to withdraw. We're losing ships too fast. We are the Krillian Empire. Thane shouted. We do not retreat from primitives. But even as he said it, he watched another capital ship die on his display. The humans weren't fighting like primitives. They weren't fighting like any species the Krillians had ever encountered. They were fighting like they'd planned for this exact moment. Like they'd been waiting for it. On Earth, in the command center, Rachel Torres watched the battle unfold with quiet satisfaction. Around her, officers coordinated the defense with practiced efficiency. Every weapon system firing exactly when and where the AI predicted maximum effect. Every platform repositioning before the Krillians could target it. Casualty report, she asked. 17 platforms destroyed, an officer replied. But we've taken out 43 enemy ships. The exchange ratio is heavily in our favor. Secretary General Hassan's face appeared on screen. Commander Torres, the Krillians are requesting communication. They want to negotiate. Rachel's smile was grim. Tell them we have a counteroffer. They have 24 hours to leave our solar system. After that, we stop being defensive. Hassan looked shocked. Commander, are you saying we can actually win this? Sir, we already are winning. The Krillians came here thinking we were prey. They just learned we're hunters too. And on this planet, the hunters have been preparing for this fight for 7 decades. On the Crimson Dominance, War Commander Thane stared at Earth's response with something he hadn't felt in decades of conquest, genuine fear. The humans weren't prey. They never had been. They'd been waiting. Watching. Preparing. And now they were ready, the hunter's trap. When predators become prey. War Commander Thane had conquered worlds before. He'd seen species fight with desperate courage, witnessed last stands that would be remembered in Krillian war songs for generations. But he'd never seen anything like this. The humans fought like they knew his every move before he made it. Analysis, he demanded, staring at the tactical display where another of his destroyers had just gone dark. How are they predicting our attacks? Dex studied the combat data, his 4 arms moving rapidly across multiple screens. Commander, I think they've been watching us. Not just since we arrived, for longer. Much longer. Explain. Every transmission we've sent to other conquered worlds over the past cycles. Every tactical communication. Every ship movement during previous campaigns. The humans somehow intercepted it all. They'd been studying us for years, maybe decades. Thane's eyes widened. That's impossible. Our encryption is unbreakable. Apparently not by human standards. Dex pulled up a specific data pattern. Look at this. Every time we've fired our particle beams, there's a 2.3-second delay before the weapon can recalibrate. We never noticed because no species has survived long enough to exploit it. But the humans, they're firing in those exact 2.3-second windows. The reality of their situation slowly dawned on Thane. The humans hadn't just prepared defenses. They'd studied Krillian tactics, analyzed their weapons, identified their weaknesses. This entire battle was unfolding according to a plan the humans had spent decades perfecting. They'd turned the Krillians' own strength into a weakness. Another alarm blared. 3 more ships taking critical damage. The human weapons platforms were repositioning again, always staying one step ahead of Krillian targeting systems. Commander, Dex said quietly, we've lost 68 ships. At this rate, we'll lose fleet cohesion within hours. 68 ships. More than they'd lost in the last 5 campaigns combined. Against a species that, according to all intelligence, should have been helpless. Pull back to defensive formation Delta, Thane ordered. We need to reassess. But even as the order went out, he knew the truth. The Krillian armada wasn't retreating to regroup. They were retreating to survive. The hidden weapons. On Earth, Commander Torres watched the Krillian fleet pull back and allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. But only a moment. Status of Phase 2 assets, she asked. Lieutenant Park pulled up a new display. All lunar installations reporting ready. Mars base is green. Deep space interceptors are in position. Dr. Sato looked confused. Commander, the Krillians are already retreating. Why activate additional systems? Because they're not retreating, Rachel explained. They're regrouping. Thane is a warrior, not a coward. He'll come at us again, harder this time, with everything he's got. So what do? We show them what happens when you threaten Earth. She turned to the communications station. Activate the Luna array. On the moon's far side, hidden in a crater that officially didn't exist, massive doors slid open. What emerged looked like a telescope, but it was pointing at the Krillian fleet, not at distant stars. Luna array charging, an officer reported. Full power in 30 seconds. Dex noticed it first. Commander. Energy spike on Earth's moon. Massive power buildup. Shields to maximum. Thane ordered. All ships, prepare for. The Luna array fired. It wasn't a projectile weapon or an energy beam. It was something stranger. A focused electromagnetic pulse, tuned to the exact frequency that Krillian ship systems used. Every Krillian vessel in range suddenly found their computers rebooting, their weapons systems offline, their shields flickering. For exactly 8 seconds, the Krillian armada was completely defenseless. Now, Rachel said calmly. Earth's orbital platforms didn't waste the opportunity. Kinetic rounds, moving at relativistic speeds, tore through the disabled Krillian ships. No shields to stop them. No countermeasures to deflect them. Just metal meeting metal with catastrophic force. When the 8 seconds ended and Krillian systems came back online, 40 more ships were gone. Thane stood frozen on his bridge, staring at the casualty reports. 108 ships lost. Nearly a third of his entire fleet. In less than 2 hours. This isn't possible, he whispered. They're primitives. They shouldn't have this technology. They shouldn't be able to. Commander. Dex interrupted. New contacts. Behind us. The display showed ships emerging from Mars orbit. Human ships, moving fast, their weapons already firing. Not massive vessels, these were smaller, faster, more maneuverable. designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses in Krillian capital ship defenses that decades of study had revealed. They had a fleet, Thane said numbly. They had a fleet this entire time and we never saw it. They built it in secret, Bex replied. Probably underground facilities, hidden construction yards. Commander, these humans, they didn't just prepare defenses. They prepared an offensive. The Mars fleet tore through the Krillian formation like sharks through wounded prey. Each human ship was operated by pilots who'd trained their entire lives for this exact battle. They knew every Krillian blind spot, every firing delay, every tactical pattern. They'd studied the Krillians the way hunters study dangerous game. And now they were executing a perfect hunt. The turning point. 12 hours into the battle, War Commander Thane made a decision that would echo through Krillian history. He did something no Krillian commander had done in 300 years of conquest. He called for a ceasefire. The human response came through Secretary General Hassan's voice, calm and measured. War Commander Thane. You issued us an ultimatum 48 hours ago. Now I'm issuing one to you. You have 12 hours to leave our solar system. Take your surviving ships and go. If you're still here when the deadline expires, we'll show you what Phase 3 looks like. On his bridge, Thane's officers waited for his response. Pride demanded they fight. Honor demanded they die rather than retreat. But survival demanded something else. What is Phase 3? He asked quietly. You really want to find out? Hassan replied. We have weapons we haven't used yet, Commander. Systems we haven't activated. Strategies we haven't deployed. You thought Earth was defenseless, but we've been preparing for this fight since before you were born. Every year you spent conquering other worlds, we spent getting ready for the day you'd come for us. Thane looked at his tactical display. 137 ships lost. The survivors damaged, their crews exhausted. And somewhere out there, the humans had more surprises waiting. You knew we were coming, he said. You knew for decades. We intercepted a transmission 70 years ago, Hassan confirmed. A signal from your empire marking Earth as a target. We had 7 decades to prepare, Commander. 7 decades to study you. To understand how you think, how you fight, how you die. And you used that time to become predators. No, Hassan corrected. We've always been predators. We just had to remember it. Thane closed his eyes. His empire had conquered 47 species by assuming they were always the strongest, always the most dangerous, always the hunters. But Earth had taught him a lesson that would change Krillian doctrine forever. Sometimes, the prey is only pretending. We're leaving, Thane said quietly. Tell your people, tell them we won't return. See that you don't, Hassan replied. Because if you do, next time we won't give you the chance to retreat. The Krillian armada departed Earth's solar system 8 hours before the deadline. 143 ships remained from a fleet of 347. Behind them, Earth's defenders watched them go with weapons still powered, still ready, still waiting. In the command center, Commander Torres finally allowed herself to relax. Around her, officers celebrated quietly, but she remained focused on the displays. Commander, Dr. Sato asked, Phase 3. Does it actually exist? Rachel smiled slightly. Do you really want to know? I think so. Phase 3 was 43 nuclear-armed drones disguised as asteroids, positioned along every possible retreat vector. If the Krillians hadn't left when they did, we'd have collapsed their formation from behind while they were focused on Earth. It wouldn't have destroyed them all, but it would have trapped them here long enough for Phase 4. There's a Phase 4? There are phases going all the way to Phase 12, Doctor. The Sentinel Initiative didn't just prepare for one battle. We prepared for a war. Lieutenant Park looked amazed. Commander, how did we keep all this secret for 70 years? Because we learned something important about being predators, Rachel replied. The best hunters don't announce themselves. They wait. They watch. They prepare. And when their prey finally arrives, they're already 3 steps ahead. She pulled up a final display, showing deep space monitoring stations that were already tracking the Krillian fleet's departure vector. And we learned something else. Once you've hunted something successfully, you keep watching it. Just in case it forgets why it ran away the first time. 5 years later. The message from the Krillian Empire arrived through diplomatic channels, not military ones. It was addressed to Secretary General Hassan, now retired but still consulted on alien relations. Humanity of Earth. The Krillian Empire acknowledges our miscalculation during our previous encounter. We propose formal diplomatic relations and mutual non-aggression. We have much to learn from your species. The message was signed by Thane, who now held the title of Strategic Reformer, 3rd class. He'd been demoted after the Earth disaster, but given the task of completely restructuring Krillian military doctrine. His first reform? Never assume the prey hasn't been preparing. Commander Torres, now promoted to Strategic Defense Director, read the message with satisfaction. Around Earth, the Sentinel Initiative continued its work. New weapons systems. New strategies. New preparations for threats that might or might not ever materialize. Because humanity had learned its own lesson from the Krillian invasion. Being prepared wasn't paranoia when the threats were real. And staying ready wasn't about fear, it was about survival. In the years that followed, 3 more species attempted to invade Earth. All 3 received the same treatment as the Krillians, a display of force so overwhelming, so precisely executed, that they retreated without ever understanding just how much worse it could have been. And each time, humanity added the new species to their study files. Learning their weaknesses. Understanding their tactics. Preparing for the day they might return. Because that was what humans did best. Not building weapons, not fighting wars, but something more fundamental, adapting, preparing, surviving. The galaxy had millions of species. Some were stronger. Some were faster. Some had technology that seemed like magic. But only one species had spent 7 decades preparing for a war that everyone else thought would never happen. Only one species looked at the stars and saw potential threats instead of just distant lights. Only one species understood that the difference between prey and predator wasn't about claws or teeth or strength. It was about who was waiting for whom.